So this is episode 34, and it's a pleasure to be talking with Helen Mitchell of the Small Publishers Fair. We should start, I suppose, by talking about what the Small Publishers Fair is, what it's been for the last however many years, 20 years, is it?
Yeah, it started in 2002. I should say good to be here as well, Anthony. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, so the fair has been going for a couple of decades now. It takes place in November every year in Conway Hall in London, and each year it brings about 60 odd publishers to London. Well, there's probably a balance, about a third of them might be London, but it brings a lot of publishers in from the rest of the UK as well. And there's also publishers from the Europe and America and other places. So there's 2 days of book fair, and that really is just a sort of a market. But we also have an exhibition. So we're in a hall. Conway Hall is kind of theatre-like, I suppose, but it's an open hall with a stage. And on the stage we have an exhibition, and we have our other publishers up there. And there are a couple of smaller rooms where we can have readings, including a tiny, really cosy room on the stage as well, where we can have really intimate readings. So it starts at 11 because London isn't an early rising city, and particularly on the Saturday, 11 o'clock, it's spookily quiet in the streets around Conway Hall. But actually, what happens is that it's not particularly about people passing by and dropping in, like something like off-print. If they do something at Tate's, then that's just full of people anyway. But Conway Hall, really, you have to be going, especially to go to Small Publishers Fair, to come to it. So just about everybody who sets foot in the hall has actually made their way to come to the hall, to the fair. People who have just dropped in, I bumped into, I was talking with an artist in Norwich the other day who had been walking past the hall and just dropped in thinking he'd spend 20 minutes and came out 4 hours later. And when he heard I had something to do with it, couldn't stop talking about how great it was. And so it's quite it's a busy event where the publishers are crammed into the hall. In the centre of the hall, tables are back to back, and so the publishers are jostling against people from the table behind them. There's the jostle of people in the queues, and it's just a constant chatter. And it's people picking up books, making contacts, and then announcements and people going to readings as well. So it's quite a sort of vibrant event. There are different characters on the 2 days because it's quite deliberately on a Friday and a Saturday. And I think the Friday is really for people who are still at work, and it is the day that specialist librarians will attend, for instance, or people from arts centres, or people who think that they may make useful contacts in their work, or who want to add to their collections. And so interestingly, some people actually sell more on the Friday, even though it's a little bit quieter. And on the Saturday, that's going to be more of your sort of general punter, and it does get busier. And there's a card that is designed by Colin Sackett, and we've had the same designer since 2002, and it's evolved a bit in the first few years, but it's sort of settled into a standard form now, which I think it's almost the identity of the fair. And there's always one single image from the exhibition that we're having, and then there's the list of the publishers. And something I thought really mattered was saying where the publishers came from. So there's the publisher name, and then Liverpool or Cambridge or wherever they're from, because I think it's important for people to see that this is about a phenomenon of publishers who are travelling. There's this sense of people coming to meet together in London, and this card is something that obviously these days it goes out digitally, but when it was first done, it's always done on a fairly hefty sort of card, and I send cards out to the publishers to post to their mailings, and again the publishers are using digital most of the time now. But actually now I've built a mailing list to go to some of the specialist art bookshops and libraries around the country, the places that people go to who are going to like the fair. And so it's got a kind of identity to itself that that people recognise, and people keep those cards now, because a lot of the people who come to this fair are people who they like to collect books and ephemera and things. It's part of their world, and so when we do print, we try to make it something that people are going to want to keep. It's worth the effort, and it is quite a lot of effort, but
yes, we'll get onto that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of making connections is really important. So that it's a nice idea to say that these people are in the UK but distant, some distance from you, or these people have come over from Europe or America. And I remember that aspect of it very clearly, that people were there to make connections as well as to buy books and to sell books.
Yes.
I also clearly remember the jostling that you mentioned, and it's an environment that seems so strange now, given the way the world has gone, to have that many people in such a small space.
Yes.
And of course, this is why it hasn't been on for the last couple of years.
Yes.
Before we talk more about the fair, I'd like to talk more about Conway Hall.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned the various rooms where events can be put on. And in fact, when I was there in 2019, and I did a talk about my book, Stray Arts, and I was in that room you mentioned, the
green room.
The green room, that's it, yeah. And it's very intimate, and it was, as it happens, when I was there, I was just recovering from a cold. It was just a cold. I'm not patient zero. It was just a cold. But so, I remember I did my talk sitting down because I was still feeling so run down, and it was strange. It was like being at a primary school and giving a reading because everyone was sitting on the floor around me.
Yeah,
it's a lovely room, and in fact, it's a lovely place.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot because I don't know how much you know about this, but if you could describe some of the history of
Conway Hall. I do know a bit about it because I've been running the fair there for a good few years now, and I did a little bit of work with the hall. So which involved me getting to learn a bit about it. So it is a really interesting place. It was, I think it opened in 1929, and it's a place that is actually set up by the South Place Ethical Society. And essentially, they're one of the societies that kind of, now we probably call it the British Humanists. So they were alternative, setting up as a community alternative to religion, really. But these founding fathers and mothers were quite remarkable, because when they built Conway Hall, and I think it was their second home, but when they built it, they also built accommodation that would be rented out in order to provide a source of income for the hall. So they really thought about, they wanted it to be sustainable into the future. And as an organisation, they would organise talks, and they would have sort of family celebrations there. They would also have walks from Conway Hall. So it was a very sort of sociable place. And when they built it, it's not massively expensive, but it is beautiful arts and crafts building. And places like the entrance hall, any boards with writing on are sort of beautifully cut old oak and quite aged and not looking absolutely top-notch and everything. There's a kind of slightly faded, used beauty about the place. I mean, I think of it almost as being a little bit like a sort of village hall for London. And but it's more than a village hall. Village hall in that it's somewhere that invites people to come in and use the space and make it their own. So it's generous. But in fact, it has got its own particular interests, and it is about humanism, free thinking and radical thinking. Mr. Conway, who it's named after, he was anti-slaves, he was a free thinker. And CND was launched from the stage of Conway Hall by Bruce Kent. The suffragettes spoke there, but also sort of bands in the 60s. It always has a sort of eclectic mix of music, and but it's been about people who care about the world and each other and community, and want to create a better world, I suppose, want to be part of an effort to have a good life as individuals. And there's a very beautiful phrase above the stage, which is, to thine own self be true. And I think that Conway Hall is a really great home for the fair, because I think for its decor, the way it was put together, and for its beautiful history, it's somewhere that resonates with the publishers from the fair, because the publishers who do the fair are none of them are sort of making a killing or anything. You know, they're doing what they do for the love of it, and part of what they do is work with other people. There's a real sense of connection amongst a lot of most of the publishers, really. Yeah.
There's a lot of experimentation. So again, that goes with the idea of free thinking. A lot of the publishers there make book art, which is very intimidating when I walked around to see this. I think, well, I can't do this. I just send it off to a printer. But you see these people who make these remarkable things. And because you have to decide who goes there. So obviously this reflects your interest to some extent. Yes,
I have very eclectic interests. So I think in a way, the fact that I have got my favourites, but I'm inquisitive, and I can see the value in all different kinds of work. I don't think I'm overly biased, and it's really important to me. I think bringing the literary into it, ensuring that the literary stays in there, because I think when I took it on, there was quite a sense that this was a book art event, and I don't think it is just a book art event at all. I think book art is part of it, and for me, I prefer the book arts to have some words in there as well. For me, it's playing with the language as well as the visuals and the form of the book.
Well, that's one thing I really wanted to ask you, and also as part of this, I want to thank you, because when we went there in 2019, we were on a table, and beside us on the next table was Tim Glassett, a press that is very friendly to Penteract.
Yes.
And just behind us we had Atlas Press.
Yes.
So you clearly put a lot of thought into that, into who sits where. I mean, it's probably a nightmare trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago that it really began to dawn on me that it mattered where I put people. And this year, 2019, I was conscious that I think I really got it right. And I do think about who individual publishers may already know and want to see again and enjoy spending time with, but also who they may really get something out of meeting. And it is an intricate thing. I guess it's like doing a wedding, the tables at a wedding. And it in the later stages of planning for the fair, it actually affects who the last people invited might be, because I'm thinking about those final slots. But yes, it really matters, and I think that it's I think it matters to the atmosphere of the whole fair, because if you've got the publishers feeling happy and feeling that everything is right with the world, then as soon as the punters come in, there's already a good atmosphere in there, and the good conversations are already happening. And in 2019, I was particularly conscious that as you went around, you could see sort of happy faces everywhere, or deep conversation, or so. Yes, I think you don't just plonk people in there. That's the way to do it. To care about those little details, I think.
Well, when you're arranging tables at a wedding, it's not just a matter of putting people who like each other together. It's sometimes a matter of keeping apart people who don't. Shall I ask you about that, or is that a dangerous question? Has that happened?
I remember one press that I think some publishers were a bit snotty about, because of alcohol being brought in on the Friday, I think, for a launch. And there was a bit of a feeling that things were getting a bit loud and unseemly in some way. But I note otherwise, I haven't really, that hasn't been a problem. And actually, I think it was said by some critic that Small Publishers Fair is the largest gathering of nice people in London ever. And there is a way in which people do just get on. this is an interesting lot of people who are they're very open and they want to be together. So it's not a big problem now.
Yeah, it's a really nice atmosphere. I've been there twice because we had a table in 2019. Then I visited in 2018, so I got to see it just as a reader, I guess, a buyer. You mentioned before that a lot of people who go there. I mean, that's why they're in the area. They're not just dropping by, and that's clear because there is so much to do. There's a lot going on. You can make a day of it. Because as well as arranging the tables, you have to arrange events throughout the day, such as, like I said, the reading I did. You get bigger performances elsewhere in the building. So how does all that work? That seems like even more work.
Well, I have a small team of people, and they're actually not, most of them aren't particularly students or anything. They're actually, I've accumulated them over a few years, and actually they come back year after year. One of them has been back to art college recently, but I'm very lucky at having this little team, and they're there to work the fair. They take an interest in being involved in that kind of work. It's actually really useful to have people who aren't kind of running off to go and buy books for their own collection or wanting to do particular readings. Or, I mean, in fact, I do try and make sure that they get to see things that they want to. But I have a small team, and in terms of the readings, for the last couple of years, I've had Angie Butler help out. I've done the programming with her, and I'm obviously in touch with the publishers early on and get a lot of that together, and she helps bring it together at the end. But the main thing that she does is to contact the publishers beforehand and talk about what they're going to be doing, get the information that she needs to be able to present the reading, because certainly, particularly for the Saturday when there are readings in the Brockway room, there's no way that I can be running a series of readings like that. So it's fantastic to be able to hand it over to Angie and one of my little team, and for the two of them to manage that space. And also, I feel it's something where it's good to have someone like Angie, who she is a practicing printmaker and publisher and an academic. And this is what she does all of the time. And so she's actually sort of better placed, I think, to introduce the books and things than I am. And on the stage, actually, on the Saturday, for the last couple of years, there's been a sort of tradition that the Royal Holloway students have hosted readings there. And what I like about them, these are all poetry readings, is that they also involve people who've done the course previously. And there's a sense of a community of people who've been through Royal Holloway and who still have a connection to the course, and then the students themselves. And they manage that for themselves. And I think that's a good thing for them to have the experience of doing. And also, they just bring a lot of young people with them as well. And I think you've published, actually, I've noticed a name or two that you've published of people who've been through the Royal Holloway course. So I think, they're some of the, they're some of the people who are going to be coming in later years to the fair.
So this has happened over a long period. You've seen already that people come to visit, and eventually they're there in as publishers. I'd like to know more about how the fair began, really. And I only recently found out that you're not a founder of the fair. You came to it a bit later.
Yes, no, I was working in museums in 2002 in Norfolk. Now, in 2002, Martin Rogers of an organisation called RGAP, Research Group for Artist Publications, set up Small Publishers Fair. And RGAP was based at the Art College in Derby. And it existed because there was a funding stream for research groups. And so Martin applied for funding and got funding, and shaped over an extended period this organisation, RGAP, which did, it made publications, it organised exhibitions and events, and it did Small Publishers Fair. So in the early days, there was a kind of connection into this academic world and this academic channel of funding. So the work that RGAP was doing, it gave them connections across Europe and the rest of the world, and so that's where I think the roots, the roots of the fair come from those early beginnings, and from Martin's connections, partly going back to Coracle Press, who still do the fair. And so Coracle was the first artist-led gallery in London, and Coracle are Simon Cutts and Erica Van Horn. And Simon has been a massively influential figure in a quiet sort of way in this small press publishing world. And he encouraged Martin to do the fair. And he's always got the next ideas, and he's always got opinions, and he's a great champion. So Martin, with sort of chivied by Simon, and with support of it was really a loose collective of academics, RGAP. I don't think they were ever formally constituted, but I think that the art college setup just allowed them to, it gave them the space to do the work that they wanted to do. And they worked, they did some really super books and some great exhibitions. I got to know them I knew Simon from many, many years ago. I worked with him in the Victoria Myra Gallery, where he was then co-director. So my particular connection with RGAP started in 2008, when I did a little bit of market research for Martin. I'd met him through Simon, and I spent the weekend going around the fair with a clipboard, asking people questions. And so that was the first time that I'd been to the fair right from the beginning. And I've probably attended, of the 20 odds, I've probably been to 17 of them or so. But so I did this questionnaire for them, and I learned a lot about the fair for them. And then they asked if I do a little strategic review, because at the time the Arts Council was nudging them towards setting up an arts centre for artist books, which I think was a misconceived idea. I think it was a time when there was a fashion for these things. And I think actually the idea of this group of academics running cafes and, you know, things which you would need in an art centre, it was just pie in the sky. And it wasn't a sensitive way to sort of approach nurturing the organisation. So I did a bit of work with them, suggesting what direction they might take things. And then I got involved in a touring exhibition printed in Norfolk, which was taking the work of Coracle to galleries around the country, Sight Gallery in Sheffield, and Shandy Hall up in Yorkshire, and the Poetry Library in London, and Norwich as well. So I worked on this exhibition with them, and during this time, in the lead up to the fair happening, Martin became ill with cancer, and he called me and asked, he'd already sent invitations out for the fair, and he asked me if I could pick up running the fair for him in 2012, which I did. And at the time I was very, very busy with freelance work, and so it was really hard work, but it sort of, I did it by the skin of my teeth. And, you know, there was a model there to work with, so it happened. But it was a sad fair, and I can't remember, but Martin died very close to that time, and in December there was a number of us went to a funeral and memorial gathering in a pub in Derby for him. But at the fair, I sat down with some of the other members of RGAP, and they asked me whether I would be willing to take it on, because they were realising that with Martin dying, that there wasn't any way that RGAP was going to continue, because in the end it had only been him. The others had supported him, but none of them really felt strongly enough that they wanted to continue with what they were doing. And what they all felt was that of all the things that they did, there were other people publishing, there were other people doing exhibitions and so on. But Small Publishers Fair actually has an identity of its own, and it was worth trying to find a way for it to continue. And so they asked whether I would take it on, and I said that I would give it a go for the next year, and I would see whether I could make it work finance-wise. And so the way it works is by charging publishers for a table, because you have to pay for the hall, you pay for the marketing, and I need to have some sort of a fee. And so I managed to make it work, and so I've carried on. And the year after, we had the exhibition was an exhibition featuring work by Martin Rogers and Les Coleman, and it's very small publishers fairish, that really. This was a fair commemorating two people of their own, really, because Les Coleman, who was someone who used to bring whole gangs of people with him and organise readings and so on, he had also died. And so that was a bit of an end of an era, I think, the 2013 fair. But I think Martin and RGAP really gave the fair these fantastic foundations and really built a reputation amongst really significant people and circles of people within academia, within the contemporary art world. And I suppose that those are maybe key worlds. And I think that in a way, as I've taken it on, I've perhaps looked to broaden things a little bit. But actually, one of the nice things about that, there was a piece of writing in the early publicity which describes Small Publishers Fair as a fair of books by artists, writers, poets, composers, book designers. So it's not just that it's a small press, it's that these are creative people choosing to use the book form as one of their forms of creativity. And so I've found that a really useful it's a sort of compass rose or whatever. It, helps me find my way with it. And I have, early on there was always the poetry came actually from Alan Halsey and Geraldine Monk of Westhouse Books. They used to programme the readings. So actually, and that was another way in which it was a northern publisher who was putting together the poetry programme. So I think actually it's the fair has actually always has its roots outside of London, even though it takes place in London. And I think that's really, really important. And I think as you look at our country now, it is one of the real kind of weaknesses to it that things have got too London-centric. There's a practicality to doing something in London, that it's somewhere that everybody needs to go to London sometimes and knows people there, and you can get there. So that's all good. But actually, the rest of the country, the fair is about valuing that rest of the country as well and saying, yes, we're all here and look at how interesting we are.
Yeah, and hence the importance of, as you said earlier, of letting people know where everybody is from.
Yeah,
it's really nice that you could continue that part of Martin's legacy. But I imagine you're also putting your own stamp on this now.
I think I've opened it out to more younger publishers, actually. And I think one of the things that I've probably brought to it is in my freelance years, I spent quite a bit of time. I worked with the Poetry Trust, who at the time were doing the Alba Poetry Festival, and I worked with the Rialto, which has been going for 30 years as a poetry magazine. So yes, I've got connections and a sense of the value of poetry, but I've always tried to look for poetry publishers where, I think there are an awful lot of quite ordinary pamphlets and books published in terms of what the book feels and looks like and so on. And Rialto actually is very beautiful, and that's why the Rialto has done the fair. But so I'm looking for poetry publishers who have a sense of the visual as well, and who are perhaps working across media. So I like poetry publishers who are organising walks as well, like Longbarrow Press or New River Press in London. So that the sense of people moving out into the world to share what they're doing. And you're clearly working with the visual as well, But also I see with you that you're someone who's massively connected to poets around the world working in the same sort of areas. So I have a sense of an interconnectedness with community. So I'm looking for people who are kind of contributing to and reaching out to broader communities and working in interesting ways.
Yeah, we always define ourselves as an international press, but that happens to be based in the UK.
Yes, why not? Yes.
And proudly from Shropshire too.
Yes.
We always have to add that.
Absolutely. I've been really enjoying your series of Shropshire words. And
Yeah,
because
well, they're new to me.
Are they? Well, yes, but aren't they a delight, these things?
Yeah. That'd be similar in Norfolk.
I was going to say, yeah. I'm also in a rural county, and yes, it has words of its own, and it has beautiful accents of its own as well. That sometimes you walk past. I walked past an elderly couple in the park the other day, and they were talking quietly and intimately with each other in this just beautiful accent, and I felt a pang because I feel these voices. I don't know whether they're going to continue, and they're very beautiful things.
Yes, well, in the last episode, I was talking to Ian McMillan about this, and I said I think the Shropshire accent really has pretty much gone now. It's a shame.
Were you actually born in Shropshire?
Yes.
Did you grow up there?
Shrewsbury.
Yes. Well, yeah, you really don't have a rural accent, do you? I've always regretted not having a Mancunian accent because that's where I was born, but I'm stuck with my BBC-ish accent.
Yeah. Well, that's both of us then. I can't really detect any Mancunian.
Well, no, you wouldn't. No. It's a long time ago.
So, well, back to the fair. Is there anything else you think that you would say that you've really tried to innovate during the last few years?
I'm trying to make the fair work harder for the publishers. I'm trying to get more people coming to the fair. I'm trying to build an audience. I spent a lot of my working life puzzling about how you bring ordinary people and just anybody, how you connect people with specialists or people with a passion. So this is me working in museums, so it might be a transport museum, or people making paintings. You know, I've run an open studio scheme. How do you bring audiences and different subjects or different creative art forms together? This is something that really interests me. And I think it's something that the small press publishing world doesn't have an awful lot of, because, you know, it's outside of the world of large bookshops. It is small print on books. It's individuals or couples or whatever working away. And so it doesn't have the big infrastructure. And as the bigger you get to as an organisation, the more likely you are to have a marketing team, you know. And so over the years, one of the things that, having started my working life in the arts, hating marketing and looking down my nose at it and sneering at it, I ended up completely converting to it. And I'm now see it as just as important as having the ability to put a budget together and follow it. You know, you need your good financial backbone, but you really need to understand your audience. You need to understand what it is that your artist is making, what it is that matters, what it is, why people should be interested in it, and how you can make it as easy as possible for them to actually get on a train or the bus and turn up at Conway Hall. And when they get to the hall, how can you make it as likely as possible that they will stay for maybe the whole day or even 2 days, that if they come to see a particular publisher, they can find their way to that publisher really easily. And how you can reach out to people, because people do get on a train and travel long distances. It's about, I don't know, 15% of the audience, but the people who travel from Sheffield or Dartmouth or whatever, the people who make that journey as punters are the people who go back with a rucksack full of books. So if you can reach those people, it really helps. I think I don't think it needs a bigger venue, Small Publishers Fair. I think the size is right. And if I can gradually build that audience, because in the early days, when I was first doing it, honestly, it was quite quiet on the Friday, and it was like having a party, and I'd be, fretting about, are people enjoying themselves? And it really didn't always look as if they were. But, with this constant working away at building the mailing list to get things going to bookshops so that people look at something, pick it up, think that looks interesting, and it's in a month's time, and I need to go to London, so I think that a lot of what I do is really, it's making those connections. It's caring deeply about the publishers and understanding what's special about them. And I really, really want other people to be able to see what I can see. Yeah. And I really want the publishers to be able to carry on what they're doing and to feel good about it. One of the nicest things a publisher said to me, who she wasn't taking part in the fair, she had done it before and she's done it since, but one year she came down from Liverpool and she came up to me in the lobby and she said, "Oh, Helen, do you know what? This is like a validation." And that sort of sense that it's really hard selling your own stuff directly. This job's great for me because I'm not selling me. I'm selling other people's stuff. And so the fair is an occasion that's laying out the table with these publishers and saying, these publishers are doing really good stuff, take them seriously. Come and enjoy their work, come and have conversations with them, strike up friendships, set up projects with them.
Yeah, I completely relate to what you're saying about how you get into marketing out of necessity, really. Because I didn't want to think about business and marketing and all these things when I started the press, because I'm a left winger.
Yes.
I don't really think in terms of money and marketing and
yeah.
And yet it's funny that you realise after a point, well, you've got to do it, otherwise you're letting yourself down, and you're letting for example, the poets I publish, I'll be letting them down if I'm not really making an effort to sell their work.
Yes.
And so I've tried to make it fun. I've tried to think of it as fun.
Yes.
And try out different strategies and see what works.
Yes. Yes.
And I found that I don't feel too much of an evil capitalist doing that. I think.
Yes. I think the thing is that the reason I used to hate it is, like you, I'm of the left, and so I used to think it was all about flogging people stuff they didn't need. And to that extent, a lot of marketing is, and we can really do with less of it. But marketing, actually, that isn't what marketing is. That's the capitalist, that's the person who wants to make the money, it's what they do. But marketing itself as a discipline can be used for good, kind of. Yeah. And so it is a clever way of understanding, of making sense, giving you models to work with. And in one of my jobs, I worked for the Millennium Festival, and the director who ran it, he was based in Newcastle, and he really knew about marketing. And so that's when I started to see good marketing plans, and I started to understand the ways of thinking that you need to be, the particular discipline and that you can use. And it's actually liberating. Apart from anything else, also marketing, it's about writing, and it's about the visual. And that all of that in itself is a pleasure, actually, I think.
Yeah, so it's a creative discipline in its own right.
It is a creative discipline. There's a lot of planning as well. But what it should really be about is ensuring that people who actually, if they knew about something, they really would like to know about it. The job is to increase the chances that they do know about it. Yeah, that's make it visible. The marketing that we do. And that's where marketing is important and so valuable. Yeah. And I mean, there's something that Simon Cutts always says, is that for him, that there's the thing that he really loves is to be able to actually hand a book to someone. It's the hand-to-hand connection. And I completely believe in that. But I also have this sense that, there's other people who, if they knew about it, they would really want to. They would want to support what you're doing. They would want the book for their collection. Yeah.
So, well, we should talk about the current fair, the Publishers Fair, because of course now this is using the internet in a way that you haven't really used it before.
Yeah.
I mean, would you like to just describe the
Yeah.
current fair?
Yes. So this year, obviously, it was impossible to meet to do the fair, but I thought it was really important to keep the awareness of the fair out there, and to also try out using the website more, because I've been able to get a bit of funding to produce a better website, and so essentially you can express the fair through website in the same way that you can the hall. So what the website allows me to do is I can invite publishers as usual, and then I can place them all on a page on the website. I can give them all a good image and a short description and a link to the website. So it's a different form of access to the publishers. And, you know, it's got, obviously it's limited, but it's still an effective one, and people buy so much stuff online now. And so the implication of making this an online event is I had to use having a decent website as one of the criteria for inviting people to take part. And so I did quite a bit of research beforehand, and it really, I mean, some people, I talked to them about small changes they could make to their website to make it more user-friendly, because I think that the whole point would be to attempt to drive people directly to the publishers' websites where they could buy work, and to use the 2 days of the fair to make a bit of a splash and let people know that this was happening. And then to use a period of time leading up to Christmas to actually promote and drive people to the website again, really using the website as an online marketplace. But it also, once I talked through the idea with a number of the publishers who advised me, and I realised that actually it would be useful to have a list of the new books that people have made in the last 2 years. And to a degree, when people go to the book fair, real regulars, that's what they want to see, the new books out that year. And if the fair had waited another year, that would have been 3 years of new books that people would have had to buy. So it's struck me that doing a book list was a good idea. And we'd had a bit of funding, not only to do up the website, but also to put together some new sort of design templates. And we had a good template for doing a programme. And so Colin Sackett worked with me to put together a very simple book list, but a very smart and navigable book list. And so that's available as a PDF. And in the initial splash, when I sort of launched the online fair, we have a mailing list of 1,200 people, and this is something that I've been gradually building over a sustained period, and it's one of our most sort of valuable tools really for reaching people. It's a very good mailing list of people who've either come to that mailing list by actually visiting the fair. Every year we gather emails, or they've signed up online. And so it's really, you know, I knew I could get the information to people who would be interested. We also did a focus on lockdown books. And this is something that I asked people when they filled in a simple form to sign up, if they'd produced anything that had been influenced by lockdown. And it turned out that nearly a third of them had. So I put together on the website, it's quite a good, I use WordPress, and it's relatively easy to use, and it's quite smart and allows you to produce something quite polished. And with the fair, these lockdown books, the images that I had to work with were absolutely lovely. So that's made another feature. So there's a really navigable book list for people who really want to see what the latest books are. And then there's this kind of unexpected but sort of timely feature on books that people have made in lockdown. And then that's sort of been a lot for the social media to focus on, really. And it's been really nice that Julie Johnson from Edinburgh and Maria White, who was a Tate librarian, have done something on Twitter that they have a Respond project where they do a tweet about a book and they ask people to respond to that book with a tweet, by tweeting a book that it has made them think of. And so it's a sort of chain reaction to their initial tweet. And that's been a nice way that people have engaged with the fair. Because I suppose what you can't get in the same way is the interaction and the connections. But actually, I've also been, because there's been a sort of active fair of some kinds going on, I've been able to look out for other things that are happening in the world. And for instance, in Sheffield, Longbarrow Press and 3 other presses are doing a market stall in the lead up to Christmas. So I've been able to give a little bit of a boost to that, because I suppose the fair has a reasonably big social media presence. And so that, there's an extra little bit of support that can be kind of activated during this time as well. So
we're on to the importance of new technology and new media.
Yes.
I remember talking to you, I think the first time we met would have been at the 2018 fair, and we had a conversation then where you were saying that you were intending to do more and more online, and even have online events alongside the live event. Obviously then the strange thing happens where you're forced to go online. But do you think that next year, let's fingers crossed, next year there'll be a real event? Do you think you'll still want to do more online activity?
Well, I haven't done any Zoom. I haven't done anything that is recorded or live. But partly I'm thinking other people are doing that, and there is a blog that is showcasing all of the work from the last 2 years that the Centre for Fine Print Research in Bristol has done. So I think I'd rather make available other things. But yes, I think that the website and the supporting social media are really important. And these are things, when I took on the fair, there was a page on the RGAP website which was incredibly clunky. And then I set up quite a basic website. So it really is, it's 2019 that I got what I think this is a website that will, it's kind of almost works a bit like a well-designed book, a reference book or something. It is easy to navigate and easy on the eye, and it's quite attractive. And then in terms of the social media, I think that is important, and it is somewhere that community has been expressing itself in some way during the fair. So the other thing about doing the online fair is essentially it sort of launched on the 2 days of the fair, which just meant social media started and the website changed and became 2021. But I decided it should continue to the 17th of December, which is more or less a final posting date. And so my commitment is to continue doing some social media until then. And I think that this sort of sustained period of engagement, it mirrors what would have been happening with the fair, what happened last year when we had the lead-in to the 2 days. So I think in an all sorts of way, it has allowed all that digital side of activity has happened in the same way. Obviously, you really, really miss seeing people. And I have, in some ways, no sense of how this is going. And Twitter is like blood from a stone sometimes, it's sort of very dispiriting, I think.
Yeah, I find with Twitter, it's all about persistence. You can just plug away and nothing's happening and nothing's happening. And then suddenly something happens.
Yes.
And then it goes back to nothing happening. But it's not something you can do unless you have that stubbornness, I think, is probably the best way of looking at it.
Yeah, and a sort of pragmatism, maybe, yes. And I had to relearn that. But one thing I think I'm learning stuff again, and I'm using Buffer so that you can preload things. And I'm now just sending out drip feed, repeat things about Twitter, because of course it's just an endless stream. And so it doesn't mean people have seen it just because you've sent it out there. I think marketing is like that anyway. You can never have enough information out there. You've just got to keep at it. But no, a nice thing happened the other day when Michael Kane from Brixton Review of Books had been reminded about the fair by one of my general reminders, and is going to do something in the winter edition that's coming up. and he's going to do a feature on the lockdown books. So that's a nice result. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So we've got to look ahead to 2022. How do you anticipate it being different now? Perhaps there'll be more work online to go alongside the live event, and I guess we don't know what sort of rules will have to be in place by November 2022. But do you have any other plans for what you'd like to do differently going forward?
Well, name badges for the publishers. I think that would be nice. Just to sort of make it even easier for people to meet each other. I would like to maybe do a funding bid and get some funding. I'd like to leave something in the library at Conway Hall that's to do with the fair. I don't really like prizes, and I think they're often used as an income generator, particularly within poetry, particularly. So it's not about competition, but if I could offer an opportunity for an interesting commission, because Conway Hall is incredibly supportive of Small Publishers Fair, and actually since I've been running it, they haven't put the price up all this time, and I think it is because they see the fair as something that they respond to and they feel is something they want to support. So the fair the library is a beautiful old space with an inglenook fireplace and busts of all these great humanists, and it feels it's very atmospheric and has a tiny balcony looking onto Red Lion Square. It's a really super space. So I think if we could do a commission, then there are display cases there as well. So I would love to do something up there, because I just want to get back into Conway Hall really. And each year I've been gradually trying to expand the reach of the fair. So going up onto the stage took a few years to achieve. Yeah, blimey. The exhibition always used to be up there and nobody would look at it. It was just this empty stage because I think people found it too intimidating and they didn't know where the staircases were. So we now put up big signs, but also I managed to persuade Otto Graphic to go up on the stage. He does these wonderful, bright, brash posters and things that he was able to put up behind him. So in the early years of populating the stage, I really had to persuade people to go up there. But now it's a very busy space. And the green room, I didn't even realise it was included in the space when I first took on doing the event. I think I've sort of tried to also on the quiet let people know that it's okay to go up into the balcony of Conway Hall, because when the hall is a bustle, but actually if you go and sit upstairs in the balcony, it's a lovely quiet place to have your sandwich and just watch everything down below you. And last year, 2019, I remember finding a group of students who were all up there sketching with their tutor. And so that idea of getting the hall more colonised and more fully used, that all inspires me. I think I just really want it to happen. That's the main thing, to be able to bring people together again.
Yeah, I confess I had trouble finding the stairs the first time I was there.
Yes,
they're tricky. And
they are.
I'm trying to think. I think I did go on the balcony last time.
Yes.
But not many people did.
Yeah.
It's quite strange. So many people down low and
yes,
nobody making use of that area. But I like the way you're thinking here. That just you've got this space. What can you do with it? That's like the way a constraint-based poet thinks.
Yes.
And it's like, most art, you define your parameters and then you do what you can within that space.
I think that's how I approach it. Yeah. And I think Conway Hall is a work of art in itself, if you like, as well. And so the connections with the hall and all the little details about the place, the designs in the hall, the funny old lecterns that they have, and the lighting, and there's so much about it that people adore. I think allowing people to cherish that space and to interact with it and feel that they belong in it, actually. And this is the generosity of Conway Hall, that it allows that kind of relationship to people who hire the hall, that for 2 days of the year becomes the home to Small Publishers Fair.
Yeah, definitely. So let's hope everything's good next year and it's all back to normal.
Yes. Yeah.
Helen, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been really interesting. And yeah, like I say, I hope I get to see you next year.
Yes, so do I, Anthony. Thank you.